Hello and welcome to the Homesick to Happy Movers podcast. I'm Keisha, and I help people who have moved to a new area heal homesickness by leading to the process of creating friendships and excitement in the new area, even if they are super shy. And today we're talking with my friend Sarah, and Sarah helps overwhelmed mamas simplify their schedules so they can find peace and purpose and live without regret. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited for our conversation today. So, would you share a little bit about yourself with the listeners?
Yeah, so on any platform, I'm with Sarah Jane if you want to look me up. But I am a mom of two. And throughout my life, I think I counted somewhere around, we've moved like 27 times for just in the past since 2012 in our one area. And so that's how I kind of connected with you. And I've just learned a lot along the way on how to simplify things because moving can be overwhelming. And, especially with kids and jobs and complications, when things come up. And so it's so important to just have a system that you're grounded in that no matter where you are, you can go back to.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important, especially in the middle of a move, where all of our support systems or the things that we usually rely on aren't there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so that's where I feel like a lot of people can get overwhelmed. So, what led you to teaching women about how to simplify their schedules?
So it was, I can remember one moment specifically where I was standing in our church building, and this is a church that I have fallen in love with and that I have a great support system. And, the pastor's wife is my best friend. And, this is a place where I should feel completely at home and accepted and loved, right? And I just remember going to a potluck and standing over by the potluck, and I had just had a conversation with someone, and they broke down from me just asking them a simple question, and it kind of triggered in me how overwhelmed I was. And then it triggered all of these thoughts of like, I don't belong here. There are no chairs left in their room. Like, there's no place for me. And I was just completely overwhelmed with all of these thoughts of like, not enough, not good enough, no one wants me, like all of these things. And I realized that it was in a place where I had just moved, and we moved twice because we were decided to build a house, and we moved into an apartment that my car had been broken into. My husband's truck was broken into 2 weeks prior. Like all of these things kept happening, and it just all hit me. And so I started with, okay, where do I go from here? I sent a big, long, gushing email to my poor pastor. And he was probably like, what is this? Because it was a book. And I was basically at the end of it, I was just like, how do I stop feeling like I'm not enough? And he was like, you are putting your value in things of the world, and you need to get quiet and talk to God and have him tell you where your value is, because it's in him. And I was like, but how do I be quiet? I'm a mom of two, and my son gets up early, and like, what does that look like? And so I sat down and I thought about it, and I started with, okay, tomorrow I am going to commit to 10 minutes of quiet time for me to just center and pray and, figure out who I am and what he says before I even start the day. And I went for a walk, and I looked up at the stars, and he said, the stars are so bright and they shine just because I put them there. and you are made to do the same. Just like, you don't need to be worthy. You are worthy already. And then there was a bird in the grass, and it like saw me and flew away. And he's like, he has everything that he needs. And so do you. And he, can fly and can live his life and feed the babies and all of the things, because I provide for him, and how much more will I provide for you? And it was just, I went on a 10-minute walk and I came back a completely different person. And I was just like, oh my goodness, everyone needs to know that it takes 10 minutes for you to completely come back as a different person. And so then I came up with this whole system of, okay, we start with 10 minutes and this is what we do. And this is how you shut off the to-do list in your brain. And I started sharing it, and people were like, oh my goodness, I thought you were crazy when you told me 10 minutes, but I'm doing it and this is what happens. And it's like this whole effect. It's been amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I deeply resonate with you when you said that you're putting your value in like the worldly things and not God. And could you explain that to a listener who's curious about what that means?
So we do not have to prove, me as a Christian anyway, I don't have to have accomplishments in my life that qualify me to be who I am and to show up in the world where I'm placed. And so I am qualified because I'm here, and because, God made me who I am, and I don't have to climb a ladder of success in order to be in this planet and be who I am and serve the people that I'm here to serve. So that's what it means for me, because especially here in the United States, I feel, and kind of what hit me in that moment at church was I was putting expectations on myself that I perceived that others had on me. And I'm expected to be a godly woman, and I'm expected to have my kids dressed a certain way and drive a certain car and live a certain place and have a certain amount of success as an entrepreneur. And if all of those pieces, all of those plates aren't spinning in the air, and I don't have them, spinning correctly with my makeup and my hair done, I'm not worthy. And that's absolutely just not the case. It's not true. It's my perception of what people are putting on me, and everyone has their own mess. Mm-hmm. They're looking at me expecting me to be anything.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you said you were thinking of other people's expectations, because like a few years ago, I was so good at putting expectations on myself of what I thought other people were expecting of me. But now I look back at it and I'm like, I didn't even know. I was just assuming and like placing more of a burden upon myself.
Mm-hmm. And other people aren't thinking about you, not very often. Other people's opinions of you are none of your business. And it's so freeing when you finally get to the point where you actually mean that,
Yes. So how does living without regret fit into the lives of women who move?
It's huge, because I think especially when we're in a time of transition, knowing exactly who we are at the core and what we value at the core goes with us everywhere, right? And it doesn't change with a different house. It doesn't change with different cars, different furniture, different placement of things, different, grocery store. All of those things don't really matter at the core as long as you're living in your life in a way that you're able to live into those core values of what matter to you. And so that is what was so great about that realization of 10 minutes of quiet, because you can have your whole house in boxes and not know where anything is, and still once you have the skills to quiet your mind and allow yourself that 10 minutes, first thing, in my opinion, it's best first thing in the morning. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what's going on, you can still ground yourself in that. And that can be your guiding, way of, okay, now I can step into my day and do all of these things, but I know who I am. And I know that I'm, you're starting in a good place. If that
right. That's so powerful. It's like a skill that they can take with them and use no matter what location, no matter what situation that the movers are in.
Mm-hmm. And I like to tell my clients to set up triggers. And especially for someone that is moving, it can be walking through a door or opening up your car door, whatever is a thing that you are doing, like when you sit down to eat or whatever. But setting up triggers to speak over yourself affirmations. And oftentimes it's not even the same every day for me, because I get those in my 10-minute, today my thing is going to be, I am grateful for whatever, or I am powerful, I'm enough, I'm, whatever I get that morning is then when I walk through a doorway, I think, like, let's go with I am enough. When I walk through a doorway, I think I am enough. I am welcome. I'm here and I don't have to prove it,
That's
Just
good.
having those little triggers everywhere completely resets your whole day. And then just thinking of things that you're grateful for throughout the day. Like another thing is a gratefulness journal or notes on your phone, whatever. If you don't have a journal, if your journals are packed, whatever, you usually have your phone on you, and just making a daily practice of what am I grateful for will help you so much in looking for those little things and making sure that you're living into the life that you want.
Yeah, that's so good. And so when you say triggers, are you talking about just setting up reminders throughout your day?
I mean, like I said, like a doorway, walking through a doorway, whatever thing that you think that you're kind of like not something that you have to think about, but something that you're going to do when you sit down to eat, when you drink water, when you walk through a doorway. This is what the small affirmation that you're going to say that resets your mind.
Okay. Yeah. And I love the one where you're walking through a doorway and saying that I am enough, because oftentimes for me in the past, like me being not enough, but those feelings came up when I was like around other people and walking into new situations and situations that made me uncomfortable. So it's such a good reminder when we're walking through those doors, when we're just starting out, that, hey, I am enough. I'm going to start using that one.
Good. I'm glad it's sincere.
Yeah. So do you think overwhelm can create regret?
Absolutely. Because what overwhelm does, first of all, overwhelm is having a long enough to-do list, too much to do, not enough time at the core, right? And so when you are in, basically that puts you in fight or flight mode. And fight or flight, how much logical thinking can we do if we're in fight or flight mode? We can't. And so we're just gonna like pick the first thing that comes to mind and go with it, and maybe more often than not make decisions that we will regret later. And that will just, and maybe, it's a decision that you have to take now steps back to fix. Maybe it's a financial decision that makes you spend more money or time or whatever that is going to cause regret. And so that's why starting with the foundations of being quiet, and then that time, like I said, it's like a whole system, but just being able to foresee, things, especially if you are a mover that's moved more than one time, you kind of have an idea of the pitfalls that can come. And if you don't, if you're a first time mover, I'm sure you can watch Keisha. I know you warn them about these things and think through these things for them. But it is so much better to be grounded and have a system of the way that you are going through your day, checking off those to-do lists, and being okay if you don't check off to-do lists, and having a clear vision of what is an actual emergency and what am I perceiving as an emergency in the time. And then what am I going to do when these pitfalls can come? So one thing that the quiet time in the first part of the day does is allows you to go, oh, okay, let me think for 30 seconds before I make this decision, before I say that thing, before I spend that money, because we've all done it when we're in a place of stress and overwhelm, we say and do things and then we went, oh. Mm-hmm. But if we have that practice of, okay, 30 seconds, calm. Okay, right. How do I react in this situation? It makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm. And I can see it actually taking stuff off of our plate in the future because we're not making those mistakes as we're rushing through life. So you said something when you gave the definition of overwhelm, that overwhelm is having too much to do and not enough time. And thinking about the definition, I feel like a lot, if most people I interact with are overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some suggestions that you have for helping to reduce the load that people are taking on?
So part of my system is it's going to sound really morbid, but I promise it works. Going to an end of life kind of situation and sitting down and thinking, okay, at the end of my life, what are the things that are going to matter that people that I love say about me? And who, on all levels, on faith, on fitness, on finances, on all of the different areas of life, what is the best version of me that I want to leave a legacy as in all of the areas of life? And once you have that as a foundation, working backwards and saying, okay, how does that fit into my everyday life? How does that change the way that my relationships are? How does that change what I say yes to? How does that change what I say no to? And who I say no to, who I say yes to? Because at the end of the day, we all have the same 24 hours, and every single yes is a no to something else. And so just being able to be firmly rooted in, okay, these are my core yeses, and this is what that looks like on a task basis, on a everyday, how it fits into my schedule. And then what's a no? Do you really need to make that extra grocery run, or can you order it online? And is that $5, delivery fee or whatever it is, you're going to go in the store and find $5 worth of stuff that you didn't want anyway. Is that as an example, is that know that I'm not going to go to the store and spend the $5 extra for pickup or delivery or whatever, going to allow you to spend more time with your kids, or going to allow you to, you know, get those extra boxes in and then not stress out about it later, or make those phone calls to change the electric bill and, you know, all of those things. So
yeah, that's awesome. I like you're saying every single yes is also a no. And that's where I started making a big pivot in my life too, is that because I was a definite yes person to everyone. I think that comes with feeling not enough, because you're like, yes, I will achieve, I will show you that I am enough, right? By saying yes to everything. And then when I was extremely overwhelmed, and I was like, I'm not spending that much time with my kids because I'm saying yes and doing all these things that I actually don't enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. I'm just doing them because I felt obligated. So it was like a big pivot for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's, and you can say yes to things for surrounding your kids, like PTA or whatever, and no shame against anyone that's in PTA or whatever. But if whatever you're volunteering for your kids, quote unquote, is taking you away from your kids, is that actually what you want to do?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think thinking from it from the end perspective is so key. That's such a good point that you brought up, because it does change the way I think about certain tasks. As I'm like hearing this and like thinking about what I'm doing, it makes the decision process easier, because like as I have my list of to-dos, there are things that are important for my end goal, and there are things that are not important for my end goal. Mm-hmm. It's a good way to like load balance, I guess.
Yeah. One thing that we now save for in our moving budget is always a move out clean. Mm-hmm. Because it's just worth it to have that peace of mind of, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a neat freak. When you take all the furniture and all the things out of a house, it's going to be dirty, and you're not going to have time to go back and clean it without stress.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're moving boxes and packing and like
you're exhausted.
All the things. Yeah. So like you're tracking in dirt as you're moving out.
Yeah. You know? To me, it's just, that's what we do. Mm-hmm. Someone to come in.
Yeah. And it would take so much stress off too, because moving in itself is stressful enough. Like the more we can say no to, the better.
Yes.
Okay. So what is the most common thing that you see that people tend to regret?
I think just the way that they spend their time. I didn't spend enough time with my kids. I didn't, grow in my faith. It's always goes back to those core values, whatever they are for that person. If they didn't pour into, if they said so many yeses in other areas that distracted them from those core value things that mean the most to them, they're going to be in a situation end of life going, I wish, Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why it is so important to build those core values into everyday life, because we just don't know, Right. So something that is a core value of mine is I didn't let my kids' childhood pass me by. I'm present with them. And I am very intentional about the time that I spend with them and looking them in the eye and trying new things and making sure that we have, like, a thing in our house is a morning dance party to get up in the morning. And like, if we miss it, it's a completely different vibe in the house. And I missed that time with them. And so it's not necessarily about the big things, you know. Yes, a big trip is wonderful, but it's more about the core, like those little moments of, my son just gave me an extra long hug and I didn't feel rushed to let go.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I want to bounce back to something you just said, is saying yes, about saying yes. Do you think it's that some people say yes to other people and not yes to themselves?
All the time. I think women struggle with that more so than men, in my opinion. And that again is where it goes back to that committing to that 10 minutes, because I'm going to tell you, when that idea first popped in my mind, I found every excuse in the book to think, well, I could be spending that 10 minutes XYZ. And then even in that 10 minutes, it took me so long to quiet my mind, because I was like, well, my son needs this, my daughter needs this, my husband needs this, everyone but me. But when you realize that saying yes to you first is filling your cup, and when you fill your cup so much that it overflows easily. It's not spilling onto people. It's overflowing and pouring into them.
Yeah, that's powerful. So, what advice do you have for the mom who has just moved? She's like still in the thick of it, like has boxes, things feel really chaotic.
Just knowing what really matters to you, and building in systems around that. So for our family, it's very important that we sit down to dinner as many times a week as possible. Sometimes it's not possible because of after school activities or whatever. But, and so what I did to ensure that was I signed up for a meal service for a short time. And there's all kinds of coupons that make that super cheap. But so we signed up for a meal service that sent all of the things. I already had the recipe and I could throw it together in like 20 minutes and we could sit down, because it didn't take me an hour to cook dinner. It took 20 minutes. And we ate well. Like nutrition is another staple in our family is, so that allowed for that. So just knowing what is at the core the most important thing to you. And then also realizing that transitions take time and it's okay. And just holding tight to the support group that you have, no matter where they are. Like, so if that means that you have a family member or a friend that you just need to be like, man, this is hard. Today is hard and I miss you. So maybe a phone call isn't a phone call. Maybe it's a FaceTime that day or a Zoom call. I know that when I first moved and I was really struggling with, I didn't have that core group of girlfriends to go out with. I reached out to a bunch of my old friends in the old area and I said, let's happy hour on Zoom because I need that, you know? And so it might look a little bit different, but just again, like sticking to that, you are worthy of, you know, that 30-minute Zoom call with your friends, if that is going to center you and make you laugh.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all this good content. I feel like our time has been so valuable.
Okay.
And where can the listeners connect with you if they'd like to reach out and chat more?
Yeah, so I am branded as With Sarah Jane on all of the social platforms. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, I don't know, TikTok. I think I'm on there now. And so With Sarah Jane. on any of those platforms, and then with sarahjane.com. And then I also have a Facebook community that on any of those platforms, there's a link to. So
okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast and chatting with us today.
yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.